Good evening. My name is Pedro Rivera, and this is Bio 520, instructed by Dr. Sandra Barrera. During my presentation, I will discuss a study performed by Pegarrero et al., and it will be explaining hemolytic disease of the fetus due to the RHD incompatibility. I will also discuss how erythrocyte production and destruction occurs. Finally, I will end with blood type compatibility that will tie into the study conducted by Pegarrero et al. Again, this is my objective. We're going to be covering hemolytic disease of the fetus, erythrocyte production, and blood type compatibility. So let us begin. So what is hemolytic disease of the fetus? This is a very serious condition. It can kill the fetus while still in the mother's womb. It is hard to understand why a mother's body would attack its own creation. I mean, it's just it shouldn't be. We must understand, though, that our body is always ready to fend off invaders, foreign invaders. So how is a fetus a foreign invader? And, it basically has to do with maternal and fetus blood type, specifically the RHD blood type, which typically gives us the positive and negative after our ABO blood type that we get when we have our blood type determined. So you'll have your A positives, A negatives, B positive, B negatives, AB negative, AB positive, O negatives, and so on and so forth. So why is RHD so important? So this antibody, the problem is that it's small. So it is considered an IgG antibody, and IgG antibodies are typically smaller than IgM antibodies. And when you compare the IgM antibodies that are typically those of the ABO blood group, the IgG antibody is very small. So IgG is important due to the fact that it can cross a placental barrier and attack the fetus. So, this means that if the mother is actually Rh negative, while her fetus is Rh positive, then problems will occur or can occur. Specifically, if this is not the first time the mother has given birth. So we know that we inherit half of our genetic makeup from each parent. For the sake of this explanation, just let us pretend that we have a mother that's Rh negative and her husband is Rh positive. Okay, so there is a 50-50 chance that the fetus will be Rh positive. So if this is the case, then the fetus can be in danger if countermeasures are not taken before the baby is delivered. On the other hand, it's important to note that this is not the case if the mother is Rh positive, regardless of whether or not her husband is Rh positive or negative. And so how is this possible? I will explain further as we go along in the presentation. But let's get into a study that was conducted by Pegarrero et al. It sets out to explain maternal alloimmunization to the RHD antigen that is expressed on fetal red blood cells and its relationship to fetal morbidity and mortality. So Pegarrero et al. Stated that during the mid-20th century, hemolytic disease of the fetus was a major concern. It was causing a lot of death. There was a lot of babies dying, and something needed to be done. So it was not until around 1968 that IgG anti-RHD immunoprophylaxis received regulatory approval and literally began saving lives. So how did it work? So IgG anti-RHD that we now know as RhoGAM, at least in the medical community, is used to inject the mother at about 28 weeks before birth. So why before birth? During a mother's first pregnancy, this is crucial if they are RHD negative. If an Rh negative mother is allowed to give birth to an Rh positive child before receiving this crucial drug in ROGAM, it can synthesize the mother. So what does this mean? So this means that the mother now will begin to develop antibodies to the Rh positive antigen, in her baby. And so during the first pregnancy, this is not as serious. But where it becomes very, very crucial is during subsequent pregnancies, because it can result in their fetus's death. And this is what has occurred around the world, and as I would explain further. So during the 28th week of pregnancy, the placental barrier becomes thin and can potentially create a situation where maternal and fetus blood transfer may occur. Subsequent pregnancies have a potential of fetal death if an Rh negative mother was never administered ROGAM. So we have already indicated the IgG Rh antibody is small, so it can cross the placental barrier and ultimately attack an Rh positive fetus, because it believes it's an invader, so it wants to get rid of it. Um, so it's kind of bizarre how nature is, but that's how nature is. The chart that you see on the slide has some data collected from Pegarero et al.'s team. And it demonstrates the number of doses that are required annually to curb the death rate around the world due to this disease. As you can see, this is incredible data. When it compares, the comparison that it makes between the doses administered annually versus the actual amount required, it is staggering. Over 12 million doses are needed, but only 3.6 million is actually administered. That is scary, and that is sad. Okay, so this next slide is similar data provided by Pegajero's et al.'s team, displaying actual doses administered annually as compared with minimum and optimum thresholds. This clearly demonstrates a huge, huge gap in services rendered based on income. Those with higher income around the world were more likely to receive this crucial immunoprophylaxis that would save their fetus. Again, this is very, very sad. Their study concluded that this is a global crisis at hand. And definitely, I mean, it should be a top priority for us to do something about this. So first and foremost, there is a lack of education regarding hemolytic disease of the newborn. So a lot of times we take it for granted here in the U.S. And around the world. There's certain places where we take knowledge, this basic knowledge that we think is basic, and we take it for granted, and we don't realize that around the world there's many people that don't have this scientific understanding, and unfortunately they end up losing their babies unnecessarily when it can be prevented. And also, in addition, to all this, the one of the biggest problem is that access to these drugs needs to be improved and made available to everyone regardless of income. So there's a big income disparity. So more and more RHD negative women around the world are becoming sensitized unnecessarily. Um, as you can see in the graph, I mean, it's just really bizarre how, not bizarre, but I should say it's really sad how the discrepancy or the relationship between income and the if you get administered this crucial drug, as you can see, those with higher income are far more, receiving far more of this crucial drug than those that don't have, that their income is not as high. So it's very sad. All right, moving along. So it is important to understand the role that erythrocytes play in this process. First of all, we need to understand how they are produced. As oxygen within the body becomes low, our kidney recognizes its environment and triggers the release of erythropoietin. So the release of erythropoietin into circulation triggers our bone marrow to produce erythrocytes, also known as red blood cells. As red blood cells enter into circulation, it increases oxygen carrying capacity. So red cells are composed of lipids, proteins, and contain hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is rich in iron and allows for the binding of oxygen that is ultimately carried throughout our body, carrying oxygen to our organs. This is very important. The lifespan of a red blood cell is about 120 days, and our spleen is responsible, for cleaning the old red cells out of our system, all the while is preserving the iron within the cell. So it's basically recycling our iron back into our body and allowing the other red cells to use it. Okay, so finally, now that we know the life cycle of the red cell, how does it play a part in blood type compatibility? So the ABO blood group is the most important blood group directly impacting transfusion reactions. ABO blood group antigen can be found on the surface of our red cells. The antigen found expressed on our red cell determines our blood type. So what does this mean? It means that our cells express a certain antigen that in turn will have antibodies in circulation to other antigens that is not on our red cell, that it's not expressed in our red cells. So it basically has the opposite. Like let's say if you have the A antigen on your red cell in circulation, you will have a B antibody. Okay, that's very important as we move along to kind of explain further how this plays a part. So this is because our body will consider those antigens that are not present on the surface of our red cells as invaders. In the slide, you will see basic blood type compatibility. And it's very important to note that there are many other antigens and antibodies out there. But the one that's most important that really causes the highest rate of transfusion related reactions is the ABO blood group. ABO and RH blood group, but specifically ABO blood group is the most important one. I mean, that you really cannot mess around with that. It has to be accurate. If not, you will, you could ultimately kill a person if you give them the wrong blood type. So O negative type blood are considered the universal donor. So these individuals are gold. They're considered gold to the blood donation industry. This is because these individuals do not have the A or B expressed on their red blood cells. So this basically means that whenever this blood is introduced to any other blood type recipient, a transfusion-related event will not occur. Again, ABO is the most important blood group system out there. There are other blood group systems that can potentially cause problems, but those are very rare. ABO is really the number one, the one that blood bankers and providers, physicians are really concerned about. Why is this the case? It is because the cells are free of antigens that the antibodies from the recipient would normally attack. So, if our the O negative donors don't have, their cells do not have those antigens. So by not having those antigens, the antibodies that the recipient has nothing to attack. It doesn't, okay, it's good to go. It's not going to attack it. It doesn't recognize, there's nothing that it recognizes that it's going to say, you know what, I'm going to destroy these red cells. That's why it's so important. So the slide shows many other illustrations of examples of blood type compatibility, as you can see. But let us go back to the study conducted by Pegarrero et al. How does this information relate? As you can see on the slide, ABO compatibility is not the only factor to consider. RHD is a vital component. The pluses and minuses you see on the image represent RHD. As you can see, a negative RH can always donate to a negative or positive RH recipient, but you would never see it the other way around. And it is due to a similar effect as seen in hemolytic disease of the fetus. Remember that an Rhd negative means you do not have the antigen on your red cell. Thus, if you transfuse Rhd positive blood to an Rhd negative recipient, the recipient's antibody circulating will attack the cells being transfused. This is similar to what occurs in hemolytic disease of the fetus when blood crosses between mother and fetus, and the mother is Rh negative and the fetus is Rh positive. Okay, so it's attacking it as a foreign invader. In conclusion, we have covered hemolytic disease of the fetus as presented by Pegarrero et al., as well as erythrocyte production and blood type compatibility. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation, and I hope you have a fantastic evening. Thank you.